So what's up, people, and welcome to the Chapter 9 discussion of 僕らの血盟, or Our Blood Oath. So yeah, Chapter 9 came out about a couple of days ago, and as always, I will leave a link to that chapter on the publisher's official US website, Manga Plus, where they're showing it for free for a few weeks. So if you're interested, and if you live in the US, yeah, go take a look at it. Okay, so Chapter 9. If you recall, Chapter 8 was a really dark chapter, and it was the first indication of where this comic was going in terms of darkness, right, and disturbing violence, if you will. And since it is a vampire horror story, you kind of expect it, but in the beginning you weren't sure because it had a little bit of a wholesomeness to it, and it still does. The overall relationship between the two brothers is endearing. But definitely Chapter 8 showed the darker side of Our Blood Oath. And Chapter 9 is basically the day after sort of situation. So Kiri's back with her mother. We know, of course, that Aki didn't make it. And it indicates that maybe not for their reason, but for the reason of Shin and Ko, this daughter and mother are being targeted by these other renegade vampires, right? I don't know if you call it renegade, if you call it traditional, the ones that have a lot more darker feeling towards the human race than somebody like Shin and Ko or even Alice. And so Shin and Ko both understand that the mother and daughter, Kiri and her mother, are in danger because this can happen again. And so they decide to live with Alice. And from this chapter, we find out that yes, Alice is a relatively elderly vampire. And because of that, she seems to be more powerful than your typical vampire. So under the certain conditions, normal vampires wouldn't dare enter Alice's lair. So this provides a perfect protection for the Kiri and her mother. And this chapter is basically about Alice introducing us to some of the lore of the vampire history in this comic. And it's a relatively standard one. I mean, it's basically understood that there is animosity between vampires and humans, although in the modern day, most people don't really know that vampires exist, and even if you told them, they wouldn't believe you. But historically, there has always been a conflict between the humans and the vampires. Naturally, that's to be expected since vampires look at humans as food. But this goes in a different way in the sense that it's not just a matter of vampires being violent to humans, but also out of the sheer fear of vampires, the humans being violent to vampires. And so Alice goes over a tale about Alfred, an ancient vampire who, as a child, grew up back in the history of the humankind. And yeah, this is one of those tales which I won't go into. If you're interested in reading about it, yeah, go check out the chapter and find out what happened to Alfred. But it's a typical tale that you often see in manga of betrayal. You saw it in One Piece with regards to the fishmen and what the humans did to them. You saw it in Black Clover, right, with the elf community and what the humans did to them again. And here it's basically what the humans do to the vampires who want to be more friendly, who want to take a more peaceful route. And because of that, that just steers everything back to the darker side, even for the people who wanted to be, or the vampires who wanted to be a lot more peaceful. It ends up in such a tragic situation that it just is a no-win situation. The confrontation starts all over again. And so this chapter is basically here to fill us in on a lot more of the situation. And of course, Shin and Ko act the way they do. Shin is a lot more reserved, but understand that there is this conflict, but it's from his perspective something that he feels needs to be stopped. Even if it didn't fail or it didn't succeed in the beginning, doesn't mean that one shouldn't try. And Cole being Cole is, of course, yeah, I mean, he's very positive in the way he looks at things, but it's almost a no fear sort of, naive sort of attitude that comes up. So the two together, fit well. The maturity that you see in Shin versus the naive, positive outlook that you see in Ko. But the question will be what happens from this point on. This was another world building and understanding the history of the animosity between the vampires and the humans. And in some ways, it's setting up a situation very similar to Tokyo Ghoul. But of course, it focuses down primarily on Shin and Ko. And that darker vampire crew is not going to leave them alone. So you know that there's going to be a tremendous amount of conflict in the future. And of course, because Shin and Ko are royal blood, that does give them a little bit of an advantage over the typical vampires out there. But even with that advantage, this confrontation is still going to come out. And so it'll be interesting to see how the next chapter moves forward with regards to this. Shin's friend, Izuki, already knows about this. And now from his perspective, he's seeing the difficulties that vampires and humans have. And so it's building up many different perspectives, right? Maybe the next chapter will be from the perspective of the humans. Then maybe the next chapter will be from the return of the renegade vampires, or it might be the further strengthening of Ko and Shin to try to make peace with the humans. We don't know. But it does give Kazu Kakazu, the author, Kakazu sensei, the ability to now start kind of writing the story from many different perspectives and giving the complexities that he wouldn't be able to do in the beginning because he was still world building. Hopefully that will bring more depth and complexity to the story, because I'm starting to see a lot more people who were like, oh, this wasn't a very good story, to, oh, now this is starting to become interesting. Let's see how far this goes. This may be very similar to how Black Clover went, because I know in the beginning Black Clover was very poorly received because of the fact that it felt very much like a Naruto clone. Everybody said this is just Naruto all over again. Asta, the main character of Black Clover, looked exactly like Naruto. Junos of Black Clover, his best friend, was basically like Sasuke. And just like with Naruto, Asta had no real talent in the beginning, but he had all this heart, right? Just like Naruto. So people were just blasting Black Clover as this is just a Naruto clone. And now, of course, many chapters later, it's one of the most popular comics in Shonen Jump. And it's deservedly earned itself the ability to go up there with its story that is very similar to Naruto, but has brought on a life of its own. So maybe our Blood Oath will do that as well, in the sense that just like many other mangas like One Piece, where it took a while for the world to build up, the complexities as it builds can be used to bring about more interesting stories in the future. So I'm looking forward to what the author will do in the future, and I'll continue on with our Blood Oath as the chapters come out. And I hope you join us in future chapters. But anyway, that's chapter 9. If you're interested, go take a look at it. And until the next chapter, happy manga reading, and as always, Jaya, nice day, everyone.